And we are back here today with another episode of The Franchise. It is March 7th, and today's a pretty big episode, especially in terms of the NFL, as today is the deadline to sign players or give players the franchise tag. So we have a lot of movement and a lot of news and rumors going on in the NFL. Lamar Jackson, will he be franchise tagged? Will he get a long-term extension before the deadline? Aaron Rodgers, he's meeting with the New York Jets. Derek Carr, Geno Smith, lots of guys have signed. What teams need a quarterback? And then I'm actually going to give out my first NFL mock draft, just the top 10 picks. I have two. I have one with trades and one without. Before we get into the episode, as always, the franchise is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. You can also follow on TikTok and Instagram. All of those are in the description of every single episode, so you can find it. Let's get things started with Lamar Jackson. This guy has been the talk of the quarterback world basically since the start of last NFL season. Lamar has been seeking a new contract extension, right? For over a year now, and he's really the next guy that's due up for an extension. And every single year, we have a new guy that's up to get a long-term contract extension. And this time around, it's Lamar Jackson. And we've gone through a full season of rumors, of talks about the Ravens and Lamar and where they stand on a long-term deal. And we have made what seems to be absolutely zero progress on a contract. And if anything, it seems that the Ravens and Lamar's relationship may have been tainted over these, past 12 months, compared to it being closer to a deal. It seems like this relationship between these two between the team and the player, has not been going good. So Lamar's set to get a franchise tag by the deadline, which I believe is in less than an hour of recording this. So Lamar's set to get a franchise tag because odds are they're not going to reach a long-term extension. First of all, it seems that they're like hundreds of $millions apart in an extension. And reports came out over these past 12 months of what Lamar's turned down. It's been $100 million guaranteed. I think there was like $150 million guaranteed at one point. Some people want to say that's crazy for Lamar to turn down $100 million guaranteed. But when you look at recent quarterbacks and what guaranteed money they got, Lamar's right to not accept any contract that begins with $100 million guaranteed. Kyler Murray last season got $160 million guaranteed, and Kyler Murray is he is nowhere near the level of Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, first of all, has won a league MVP, and he's won a playoff game. Lamar Jackson is easily, in my opinion, a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Kyler Murray, when he's at his best, can be 11, 10, 9, but he's never consistently been a top 10 quarterback. Now, Kyler Murray's a great player. However, Lamar Jackson's worth way more than $160 million guaranteed. Derek Carr just got $100 million guaranteed. We'll talk about him in a minute. Aaron Rodgers has a very large guaranteed contract. And the guy that is really being pointed to is Deshaun Watson. He has $230 million guaranteed on his contract for a guy that, first of all, has had a lot of off-the-field issues, and then last season in his first year coming back in over a year and a half plus was very, very disappointing. So if you're Lamar Jackson, I think he's obviously looking for a contract with the guaranteed money that starts with a 2. He deserves that. He's one of the best players in the league when he's on the field. Now, that obviously is an argument and a conversation when he's on the field. But he's a very healthy player considering his skill set. He's a very heavy rusher. He's one of the best running quarterbacks in the league. He takes a lot of hits. He uses his legs a ton. However, he stayed on the field a lot in his career. Now, last season he missed tons of time with an injury, and the year prior he missed some time as well, but every other year of his career, he's played a majority of the games. So I don't think injury is really as big of a concern with Lamar as it should be with a guy like Kyler Murray, because Kyler Murray just tore his ACL. But Lamar, he's more than likely going to get one of the two franchise tags. Now, this is a whole nother storyline in itself. Which franchise tag do the Baltimore Ravens put on Lamar Jackson? Do they put the exclusive franchise tag, which is the tag that basically every other player in the league gets when they get franchise tagged, which is, we will pay you, I think it's the top 5 salaries at that position averaged out. That's usually what that franchise tag is for the one season. But with that tag, a team can trade or offer 2 first-round picks for that player. So if the Baltimore Ravens place that exclusive franchise tag on Lamar Jackson, a team, for example, the Raiders, can offer 2 first-round picks for Lamar Jackson in a potential trade. Now, the other franchise tag that's interesting that we could actually see be placed on him in the next hour is the non-exclusive franchise tag. And this is the franchise tag where Lamar can negotiate contracts with other teams and the Ravens can match. So it's very similar to in the NBA when a guy is a restricted free agent. He agrees to a deal with another team, but this happened with the Bulls and Zach LaVine. He agreed to a deal with the Kings a very long time ago. The Bulls matched the contract. So Lamar can negotiate a deal with the Raiders, says he agrees to a 6-year, $200 million deal, and then the Ravens can match that. And if they don't match it, Lamar's a Raider. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do, because I don't think it's going to happen in the next hour where they reach a long-term extension, because yesterday it came out that they're not close at all. So if they made, a hell of a lot of progress in 24 hours, that'd be crazy to see. So he's going to either get one of these two, franchise tags. And if it's the non-exclusive one, I don't think Lamar Jackson is going to be a Baltimore Raven next season, because if they don't want to guarantee him $200 million, I think the Atlanta Falcons or the New York Jets or the Raiders or the Carolina Panthers, one of those teams is going to say, here's a fully guaranteed contract. Baltimore, you want to match it or not? So Lamar Jackson is easily, one of the biggest storylines currently right now in the NFL offseason. And then the next one's going to be Aaron Rodgers. We still have yet to hear what exactly his future in the NFL is since he's came out of his darkness retreat. I think it was over a week, maybe even 2 weeks ago now at this point, that he came out of his darkness retreat to figure out his life and his future. We don't know if he's A, going to retire, B, going to play football again, C, if he's returning to the Packers, or D, if he wants to play somewhere else. Now, it came out on Monday that he met with the Jets, and then today it came out that the Packers have granted him permission to speak with the New York Jets. So, in my opinion, I think we can rule out the possibility of Aaron Rodgers retiring. Now, can I really rule it out? I don't think it's appropriate to do so, because Aaron Rodgers speaks about retirement a lot. But I think with him meeting with the Jets and the Packers granting him permission, I think you can read that as, okay, he's going to be playing football next season. So I think we can rule out retirement. I think you're left with 2 options. Does he return to the Packers or does he go elsewhere? And if you're reading what this says, the Packers granted him permission to speak with the New York Jets, I think you can interpret that as the Packers are trying to move on from Aaron Rodgers. Now, they are personally not going to be the ones to do that. They're not going to be the ones to trade Aaron Rodgers if he doesn't want to be traded. So they are trying to say, hey, Aaron, we want you to move on from us so it ends cleanly on our side. We move on to Jordan Love, and you go to the Jets, to the Raiders, whatever team you end up going to. In terms of him meeting with the Jets, I think the Jets are easily the team that needs him the most. I think it's either between the Jets and the Raiders that need Aaron Rodgers the most. They missed out on Derek Carr, right? The Jets were in on Derek Carr. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is a way better player than Derek Carr, so they didn't want to sign Carr if they have the potential to get Rodgers. But if they don't get Aaron Rodgers, they're left with Zach Wilson, who's still on roster, Mike White they could re-sign. Jimmy Garoppolo is arguably the best quarterback free agent left out there on the market. Baker Mayfield, do you bring him in? How much does that improve your roster from Zach Wilson? Do they draft a quarterback? Do they go out there in the NFL draft and draft a guy Do they get Lamar Jackson? So they need Aaron Rodgers more than any other team in the league, in my opinion, because, I mean, their roster, first of all, is a championship caliber team. Their defense last season was one of the best defenses in the NFL, with Sauce Gardner at that corner position and the guys on the defensive line. And then that offense is very exciting as well. Garrett Wilson just ran Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's a great receiver. Elijah Moore out there at receiver. You're going to have Breece Hall returning at running back. Zonovan Knight at running back. Their offensive line is pretty solid. They have Tyler Conklin at that tight end position. And then, what's his name? CJ Uzma. I can never say his name right. From the Bengals 2 seasons ago. They signed him last offseason. So they have all of the pieces except for that quarterback to compete for a playoff spot and to compete for a championship. So all they need to do is add a quarterback, and adding Aaron Rodgers is the perfect guy to do that. I know he's older, and you could say he probably only has, 2 real NFL seasons left in him. But he's the perfect quarterback for the Jets, and if they miss out on him, I mean, they're going to be stuck in the exact same position that they are currently in right now, which is they don't have a true quarterback to compete in the AFC. Derek Carr signed with the Saints, 4 years, $150 million, $100 million guaranteed. For me, it was, in terms of Derek Carr, it was between the New York Jets, like I just mentioned, the Saints, the Panthers. The Buccaneers were never really mentioned, which is surprising because I think they really need to go out there and get a quarterback. But he ultimately goes to the Saints. This team last season finished 7-10. Or sorry, 7. Was it 7-10? Yeah, they finished 7-10 last season. Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton played quarterback for them. This roster has some nice pieces. I think Derek Carr improves this Saints team to the best team in that division. I mean, the NFC South is easily the worst division in football. They have every team in that division prior to Derek Carr signing had no quarterback on their roster that was a true threat in that division. You look at the Falcons, that's a horrible team. The Buccaneers don't have Tom Brady. The Panthers have Sam Darnold at quarterback. And then the Saints bringing in Derek Carr easily puts them as that favorite in the division right now. I mean, Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill, Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, their young wide receiver, Jarvis Landry. And on that defense, Cam Jordan, Marshawn Lattimore, Tyrann Mathieu, Mario Davis. This is a very, very nice team, easily the best team in that division. And Derek Carr, for the next 4 years, I think he'll be, I don't see the division getting much better unless the Falcons get Lamar Jackson or the Panthers get Lamar Jackson. The Saints will easily win that division next season, at least on paper. I mean, you never know what can happen. Geno Smith re-signed with the Seahawks, 3 years, $105 million, $52 million guaranteed for just this upcoming season. So he's getting $52 million next season. He had a great year. Led the NFL in completion percentage at 69.8%. 60.8 QBR, 30 touchdowns, 11 picks, 4,200 yards. Led a Seahawks team that, when they traded Russell Wilson at this time last season, you thought the Seahawks were going to be a horrible team, having a top 5 draft pick. Now they do have a top 5 draft pick, but it's not theirs. It's from the Broncos. Geno Smith really exceeded expectations last season with Seattle. He's going to be there for the next 3 years. Now, they're a team that could go out there and definitely, draft a young quarterback in the draft, but Geno Smith will at least be their starter for next season for sure, and definitely the possibility of the next 3 seasons. Some other news: Orlando Brown not franchise tagged by the Chiefs. They're way over the cap, trying to get under it. He'll be one of the hot offensive line free agents on the market. He's a very good tackle. Tony Pollard got tagged by the Cowboys. He'll be making $10 million next year. He's easily the best running back on that roster. Ezekiel Elliott is a prime cut candidate because he's been horrible since he signed an extension. Tony Pollard is an absolute beast. Robbie Chosen Anderson is expected to be cut. Josh Jacobs, Evan Ingram, both franchise tagged by the Jaguars and by the Raiders. The Texans are apparently interested in Jimmy Garoppolo. this can make sense because, like, I think they're going to go out there and draft a guy. You have the second overall pick. You better draft a quarterback when there's 4 quarterbacks that could go in the top 10, and in my opinion, in the top 5. So if they draft a guy, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Richardson, whoever they draft at that second overall pick, I don't think it's appropriate for that guy to play immediately when he gets drafted. So Jimmy Garoppolo being a guy, bring a bridge quarterback and a mentor to that young guy makes sense. Other news, Broncos are shopping Cortland Sutton, Tom Brady, and Phillip Rivers. Okay, Tom Brady rumors were swirling at the combine as people are saying, keep an eye out on him. We don't think he's retired. He might go to Miami. Well, Tom Brady just said that he's actually retired, so he's never going to come back and play in the NFL. I really believe that. I don't think he'd ever return, even if he didn't say that. He retired twice. I don't think he's going to pull a Michael Jordan. Phillip Rivers, this one was interesting. He called up the 49ers and the Dolphins last season. He called them up about playing during the Tua and the Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance injuries last season. Obviously, he didn't get signed. I just don't think he's an NFL quarterback at this point. He's, 40-plus years old. And his last season with the Colts, he was okay. Frank Clark got cut by the Chiefs as well. These next two are some big ones. Calvin Ridley got reinstated by the NFL, suspended indefinitely for gambling in 2020 from the Falcons, traded to the Jaguars, and then gets reinstated, so he'll be able to play next season. That is huge for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They went 9-8 last season, won a playoff game, went into Arrowhead Stadium against the Chiefs. They had moments in that game where they could have beat the Chiefs and then head to the AFC Championship. I like their roster. I mean, they're bringing back Evan Ingram, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk was their number 1 last year. You're talking about him being their number 2, adding Calvin Ridley, Travis Etienne, Trevor Lawrence, and Doug Peterson at head coach. I mean, easily the Jaguars are the favorite in the AFC South, and they won 9 games last year. I think you're looking at a team that can win 10, 11, maybe even 12 games next season in the Jacksonville Jaguars. All right, this one is another big one. That is Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, and the New York Giants. Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley both are projected to be free agents. Now, a team can only place the franchise tag on one guy, on one player on their roster. So, first of all, the Giants have a tough decision. If they can't reach an extension with Daniel Jones, let's say they don't reach it, who do they place the tag on? Do they place the franchise tag on Daniel Jones or Saquon Barkley? Saquon, if you place the tag on him, it's about $10 million. Daniel Jones, you place the franchise tag on him, I mean, you're looking at what, $36 to $40 million next season for Daniel Jones? Which I guess isn't bad because they're already talking, there's extension talks with Daniel Jones about him getting $40 million a year for Daniel Jones. That is crazy. Daniel Jones is not worth $40 million a season. He's just not. I can name, are we about to do this? I bet I can name 15 quarterbacks better than Daniel Jones. And I'm going to write them down right now. Patrick Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Herbert, Lamar, Aaron Rodgers, Kyler Murray, I think, is easily better than Daniel Jones. I don't care what Daniel Jones did last season. Kirk Cousins. Now, I know Daniel Jones beat Kirk Cousins in a postseason game. Shit. I shouldn't have said 15 quarterbacks because I don't think I can name 15 quarterbacks better than Daniel Jones. But you could easily name 10, maybe even 11 to 12. But Daniel Jones is not worth $40 million a season. I mean, we have to pull up his career stats, and we have to pull up what he did last season because despite the fact that, yeah, he played great last season, the Giants made the playoffs for the first time since 2016. He is not worth $40 million a season. He is not a guy that can go out there and win you a Super Bowl. He is a guy that can take a team to the playoffs, I guess, I mean, you look at the first 3 seasons prior to this last one, 4-7, 5-9, 3-9, during his time as a quarterback with the Giants. 24 touchdowns, 11 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 10 interceptions, 7 interceptions. Completion percentage 61, 62, 64. Last season was great. 3,200 yards, 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 67 completion percentage, 9-6-1 record, led the Giants to the postseason. But he is not worth $40 million a season. I just think it's absolute blasphemy if he gets $40 million a season guaranteed on his contract. I mean, Mahomes doesn't even get 40 M's. Burrow has yet to sign an extension. If Daniel Jones gets 40 mil a year, Lamar Jackson is getting 50, Burrow's getting 50 to 60, Mahomes should renegotiate to get 100 mil a year. The gap between Daniel Jones and these top guys in the league that actually make or should make 40 mil a year is massive. Now, the Giants are in a desperate position because if they don't give him 40 mil a year, I mean, yeah, they could franchise tag him and it's going to be about the same and you only get him for 1 year. The Giants have a choice, do they give him an extension that's probably going to start with a 4 per year, or do you let him walk and you have to restart and find a quarterback? He played great last season as a rusher and as a passer. I just don't think he's a guy that you can go out there and win a Super Bowl with. He can win you a playoff game and take you to the playoffs, but he cannot win you a championship, which is what the goal should be for all of these teams. They should not settle for a quarterback they currently have just because you don't want to risk the restart or risk missing the playoffs when Daniel Jones is not a guy that's, going to lead you to a Super Bowl when he's not even a top, 12 quarterback in the NFL? He's not a top 12 quarterback in the National Football League. And then Saquon Barkley, there's a lot of people, a lot of, fans of different teams talking about, perfect offseason. We signed Saquon Barkley to 4 years, X amount of money, fully guaranteed. Why are we signing running backs to extensions that have had multiple knee injuries, multiple injuries throughout their young career? I mean, Saquon Barkley missed all of the 2020 season. He only played 2 games because he tore his ACL. In 2021, he played 13 games, and in that year, he had 500 rushing yards. Last season, he had 1,300. In 2020, in 13 games, injured again, had 1,000 yards. 2018, when he first got drafted, 1,300 yards, 11 touchdowns. So he's had 2 seasons when fully healthy that he's been a 1,300-yard receiver, 10-plus touchdowns, 6-plus yards per attempt. So when he's healthy, he's a great running back, but he's had 3 seasons and 1 full season out with an ACL, knee injuries. I just don't see the point or the reason in paying this guy because he's arguably and easily going to get a lot of money, right? There's going to be teams out there that are going to pay him a very, very big check to be their running back. I just think that's a very irresponsible decision. Running backs are not the focal point of offenses anymore in the NFL, right? You're not paying Saquon Barkley to run your offense, right? If the Bears go out there and they sign Saquon Barkley, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes they could make with their cap space. Now, if a team like the Bills or a team like the Chiefs goes out there and signs him, obviously that is a great decision because he's not going to be the focal point of that offense. But if Saquon Barkley, now last season I know he was the focal point of the Giants offense, but that was really during that first half of the season. I mean, the rest of the season and the postseason, he wasn't getting as many carries compared to Daniel Jones or compared to other running backs in the NFL. Now, I love Saquon Barkley. He's a great player. But these teams, I mean, obviously I think they are going to be concerned about signing a player, right? Like Saquon Barkley, who's had multiple injuries throughout his career. And if you're going to pay him all of this money, you have to... I just think it's very irresponsible. And if you're the Giants, the Giants are really have it tough because they have a great defense, but their offense is a lot of guys that they have no receivers. First of all, their receiving core sucks. They have a great offensive line, but it's their quarterback and their running back that are both free agents that they could both re-sign because those guys were great for them last season. But if they re-sign them, how much better are they going to get next season, the year after, 2, 3, 4 years from now with those guys on roster compared to if they let Saquon walk and they find a running back in the second, third, fourth round of the draft or in free agency, and if you let Daniel Jones walk, or if you just re-sign Daniel Jones to a franchise tag, I think there's way better quarterbacks and way better running backs out there for cheaper than those two guys. All right. NFL mock draft, we have 2 of them for you. Once we get closer to the draft, I'm not really sure which one I'm going to do. We're doing 2. First one is a mock draft, top 10 picks with no trades. So this one's boring if no trades happen in the NFL draft, which probably there's no way that happens, especially this year. But top 10 picks with no trades. Number 1 overall to the Chicago Bears, I have Jalen Carter from Georgia. Now I know there's been some legal off-the-field issues that have recently, in the past week, came out with Jalen Carter. I think if those get resolved, obviously it's a big if, right? If those get resolved and if all charges, anything, if no legal stuff happens to him and he gets off with whatever, Jalen Carter easily is the most talented non-quarterback in this draft class. I mean, his ability to rush the passer, he's strong, he's fast, he's quick. He has a lot of great moves as a rusher. What he did at Georgia is absolutely dominant. He'd easily, in my opinion, be the number 1 overall pick. Number 2, Houston Texans. This is a quarterback for me. Now, a lot of people have Bryce Young being taken by the Texans, whether it's 1, 2, whatever. Bryce Young is the guy that they think the Texans will take. Me personally, I'm going with C.J. Stroud. I think C.J. Stroud, I've said this for weeks now, I think. C.J. Stroud, for me, is easily the best quarterback in this draft class. I think it's him, and then you could put Bryce Young, and then Richardson, and Will Levis, and so on and so forth. C.J. Stroud's easily the best quarterback in this class. Now, I know in college he didn't win a Heisman Trophy, he didn't win a national championship, but over his 2 seasons starting at Ohio State, he was easily the best quarterback in the country, especially in 2021. I know Bryce Young won the Heisman in 2021, but I think C.J. Stroud had a better season when you look at the numbers. Higher completion percentage, higher yards, more touchdowns, less interceptions. Or actually, I think Bryce Young may have had less interceptions. Bryce Young, 2021 stats for the 2 respective quarterbacks in Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. Young had 4,800 yards, 47 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 66 completion percentage. C.J. Stroud, 4,400, 44 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 72 completion percentage. So Bryce Young had a slightly better season, but neither of these 2 teams won a championship. Neither of these 2 teams did a whole lot in the college football playoff. And then in 2022, Bryce Young had a down season. 3,300 yards, 23 touchdowns, 64 completion percentage. C.J. Stroud, he had a down season as well. 3,600 yards, but 41 touchdowns, 6 interceptions on a 66 completion percentage. His team made the college football playoff, and he almost beat Georgia, the team that won the national championship. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean anything really when it comes to the NFL, but I like C.J. Stroud's arm better, his consistency, his accuracy to all levels of the field compared to Bryce Young and his smaller frame. So I have C.J. Stroud going number 2 to the Texans. Number 3, Arizona Cardinals. I have Will Anderson Jr. This guy, before the start of the college season, was a guy that you could pencil in as the number 1 overall pick. Linebacker from Bama. Number 4, I have the Colts taking Bryce Young. I think he's, like I just said, he's easily the second best quarterback in this draft class, in my opinion. The Colts need a quarterback. I think they're taking him at number 4 in this no-trade mock draft. Number 5, I have the Seahawks taking Anthony Richardson from Florida. I know they just re-signed Geno Smith, but he's only there for 3 years, and how many good years? Can Geno Smith replicate what he just did last season for the next 3 years? It's definitely possible. But you're in this position, the Seahawks are in a position that they're never really in. They have the 5th overall pick in a class with 4 quarterbacks. in the potential top 10 picks. So for me, Richardson sitting behind Geno Smith for 2-3 seasons is absolutely perfect situation for him. Going to Seattle with Pete Carroll as the head coach, I think he'd develop perfectly in there with the Seahawks. Number 6, Lions. I have them taking Devon Witherspoon, the cornerback from Illinois. Number 7, Raiders. I have them taking Will Levis from Kentucky, quarterback. Number 8, I have the Falcons taking Tyree Wilson, the edge rusher from Texas Tech. Number 9, I have the Panthers taking Nolan Smith from Georgia. This guy had an amazing combine. And then number 10, I have the Eagles taking Christian Gonzalez, a corner from Oregon. So that is the base no-trade mock draft. Boring no-trade mock draft. Here is, my real mock draft with trades currently at this moment. Now, some of this can change, I'll get to it. Number 1 overall pick, I have the Indianapolis Colts. I have the Colts trading with the Bears. You're looking at a 1, a 2, and a first next year at minimum for the Colts to move up to number 1. And I have them taking C.J. Stroud. He's my number 1 quarterback in the class. I am going to have him being taken number 1 until we get to that final mock draft where we finally, realize who's going to go where. C.J. Stroud for me, number 1 overall to the Colts. Number 2 is still the Texans. I have them taking Bryce Young. Number 3, the Atlanta Falcons make a trade with the Arizona Cardinals. They trade up from number 8 to number 3. And they're going to take Anthony Richardson from Florida. I think he fits that Atlanta culture and that Atlanta Falcons offense perfectly with those weapons that they have there. Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Cordell Patterson in that running game, and a decent offensive line. Anthony Richardson for me going to the Falcons. Number 4 is the Bears. Some people are saying that they could trade down once, twice, maybe even 3 times. I think they're going to stay at 4 because they're going to end up getting Jalen Carter. In that first mock draft, I had him going number 1 to the Bears. I don't think you want to miss out on a guy like this. Now, yeah, the Bears could trade back and keep getting picks and picks and picks, but at some point, you're going to need to draft a player. And they could trade back, to 9 to 10 or, later in this first round. But are you going to get a player as impactful or as potentially as impactful as Jalen Carter? I don't think so. Number 5, the Raiders. They are going to trade up 2 spots with the Seahawks to guarantee they get a quarterback. And they're going to take Will Levis from Kentucky. Number 6 is the Lions. I have them taking Will Anderson from Alabama. Number 7 and number 8. I have at number 7, I have the Seattle Seahawks taking Paris Johnson, a tackle from Ohio State. And then at number 8, I have the Arizona Cardinals taking Tyree Wilson from Texas. Texas Tech? The edge rusher. Number 9, I have the Panthers taking Nolan Smith once again. And then at number 10, I have the Eagles taking Devon Witherspoon, since he falls pretty heavily in this draft with these trades. So currently, in my mock draft with trades, I have 3 quarterbacks going in the top 3. I think at some point you could potentially get 4 quarterbacks going into the top 4. I almost did that. I have 4 in the top 5 in Stroud, Young, Richardson, and Levis. So that is my mock draft with and without trades. There's going to be a lot more variations of this. This is only the first mock draft. So, there's going to be a lot more that come from now to the NFL draft, which is a little bit about a month and a half away. And then real quick, finally, I know we've been talking a lot of football on today's episode, but real quick, I wanted to mention the Ja Morant situation. Over the last month, it seems, there's been a lot of talk about Ja Morant and his off-the-court antics. First of all, there's rumors that his squad rolled up on some Indiana Pacers players after a game and pointed a gun at them. And then there's, I think it was a week and a half ago, there was rumors that over the summer, Ja Morant beat up a 17-year-old. I don't remember exactly the report said why he did that, but there's rumors that he did that. And then just a few days ago, John Morant went on Instagram Live, was partying in a club, and flashed a gun on his IG Live. He's since been suspended 2 games at minimum by the Grizzlies, and then now the NBA is investigating because this came out earlier this morning. If John Morant had a firearm on the team plane or the team premises, that is a minimum of a 50-game suspension from, according to the CBA, the agreement between the Players Association and the NBA. If a player has a firearm on the team plane, on the team facility, on any team grounds, he is suspended 50 games. So that's what the NBA is investigating, because obviously this happened in Denver. John Morant was on, I think it was in Denver. They were not at home. They were on the road. John Morant went out, partied at a club, flashed a gun. He's since been suspended 2 games, like I said, but if this ends up being his firearm and it was brought on a team plane or in the facility, John Morant's getting suspended 50 games, and that is, first of all, absolutely detrimental to the Memphis Grizzlies, a team that is, you could say, is a true championship contender this season. They're second in the Western Conference. They're a great, ferocious team, young team that has a lot of potential to go out there and win a championship this season. And John Morant is one of the great young players in the game who has tons and tons and tons of potential. And if he gets suspended 50 games for this very stupid, irresponsible mistake, as a guy who, is living an absolute dream life, if he's out here making these very stupid mistakes, that is going to be very costly for his career. If he gets found of having that firearm on team in a facility or on the plane, and he gets suspended for 50 games, I think that could be a very, very big turning point in his career, and you could see him, possibly get released by the Memphis Grizzlies, because, that is actually very, very crazy. But that's going to do it for this episode of the franchise. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to do the NL Central preview, and then recap whatever happens the rest of today in the NFL. So we'll be back tomorrow with another episode. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TikTok, Instagram, all in the description. We'll be back tomorrow. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and see you guys later.